In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at what the difference is between a vector graphic and a bitmap or raster graphic is. Now, understand that Illustrator deals in a vector environment, whereas programs like Photoshop, well, most graphic programs will be in a bitmap or raster environment. So let's look at the difference between these two, and let's really grasp why or why not, or in what situations will we use one over the other. If you're already using Photoshop, you may be asking, well, why do I really need to learn Adobe Illustrator? And I hope with this tutorial I can show you a little bit of why it is an important program to learn and understand. Now, from our friends at Wikipedia, they've provided some definitions to us of what a vector graphic and what a bitmap graphic is. So let's take a look at this. Now, it's not going to make a lot of sense up front, but I hope with this explanation we'll get a grasp of it. It says here that a vector graphic, the use of geometrical primitives such as points, lines, curves, and shapes, or polygons, which are all based on mathematical equations to represent images in computer graphics. And I just put in there in parentheses that common file types that you'll see for Adobe Illustrator are an EPS, PDF, or if you're saving it out as an Adobe Illustrator file, that's a .ai. Now, what does that definition mean? It's quite complicated. What that means is that vector images use a lot mathematical formulas and using shapes and lines and curves to create a particular design. Whereas bitmap, if we look at it, it says are data structures representing a generally rectangular grid of pixels or points of color viewable via a monitor, paper, or other display medium. Common file types we'll see for bitmaps are JPEGs, GIFs, and PNGs. So, bitmaps work a lot like with our TVs. When you go to buy your TV, you look at different resolutions, 1080p, 720p, 480p. What does that mean? It's telling you how many pixels or little dots are on your TV. So bitmap art uses little dots that they call pixels to create and form an image. So let's take a look. Here in front of us we have two different logos. This is a logo I created for a local company here called Vure. Now, one of these on the left is our vector image and on the right is our bitmap. Let's take a look at the difference and let's really get close to see what it means to be a vector image. Now, if I zoom in real close on this, on the vector image, look how clear it is. No matter how far I zoom in, it is a crystal clear line. And that is because Adobe Illustrator is using mathematical formulas to create this image. It's using a shape and lines to do this. This means I can blow this up as big as I want. I can shrink it down as small as I want. It doesn't matter. The mathematical formula will automatically figure out the design for me. That means a lot when you work. For those of you that worked in Photoshop, you know that if you start out with something real small and try to blow it up later, it's going to look really bad. It's going to start to become really pixelated. In a vector environment, you do not have to worry about resolution or pixels. So you could start out very small, and your client later on down the road could say, well, I need this to be a bigger poster or something bigger, and you could easily just expand the size of it and you're not going to lose any resolution. Now let's take a look over here at the bitmap. Exact same logo, except this is a bitmap version. Look, if I zoom in and we start to see each individual pixel. Now it's using different shades of white and gray and almost a black charcoal color to create the appearance of the lines. When I zoom out, I can't see these individual pixels. They're so small, but they are there. So that is one of the biggest reasons Illustrator is very, very helpful. So remember, in Adobe Illustrator, we are working in a vector environment. Now quickly, why use vector graphics when you can do so much more with bitmap graphics? Vector graphics come in handy when you are dealing a lot with print or manufacturing. For example, when I first learned Adobe Illustrator, I was working for Reminder Band that makes silicone wristbands similar to the Livestrong bands. Now we are required with all of our customers to deal with vector images, and this is because the computers need those mathematical formulas to know exactly where to deboss the phrase onto the band. If we were to give the factory a pixelated image, a bitmap image, it's going to be guessing where the lines are. The machine isn't going to know exactly where to put those lines. So vector graphics come in handy a lot when you're doing things such as that, or screen prints on T-shirts. I have used Adobe Illustrator a lot for marketing posters that have been printed on vinyl. I know some people like to design their websites in here. I don't do a lot of that, but you can pretty much design anything you want. But the production side of graphics is usually where I found that Adobe Illustrator is most helpful. Now, let's say that we have a bitmap image and we want to convert it to a vector image. I'll show you how to do that. Adobe Illustrator has a tool to help you do this. It's not extremely accurate and the results aren't always that great. But there is a way to do it without having you go in and exactly do your own tracing and your own shaping with different tools. It takes some time. To do this, Illustrator has something called a live trace. Now let's just get our normal selection tool, this guy up here. If you want the quick key function, it's V as in Victor. And let's go ahead and let's click on this smiley face. This smiley face is currently a bitmap image. Let me zoom in on it so you can see the pixels. As you can see, we've got the pixels in there using different shades to create that. Adobe Illustrator has something called a live trace. If we go up into the top toolbar, there's a button towards the middle that says live trace. Converts raster images into tracing objects. Let's go ahead and click that. As you can see, it automatically did it for us. You have different settings here that you can change. The threshold will change how accurate the trace is. I wouldn't mess with that setting too much, but sometimes it helps to play with it a little bit, especially if you're trying to get a real urban-y or grunge look to an image. This drop-down box right here towards the left-hand side gives you some different options. Let's say I wanted to keep the color in there. Let's say I wanted it to be high quality. This photo, high fidelity. Give it a second. It will re-rasterize it and retrace it for us. And if I zoom in, you can see how Adobe Illustrator did the best it could to find those edges. It's never going to be perfect, but this is the best that it can do. Once you've decided that you like the trace, you can change your settings from here as much as you want. But let's say that you want to finalize your settings and you say, this is what I like. There's a button right here towards the middle on that same toolbar that says expand, convert tracing object into paths. If I hit this, my image has now become a traced image that I can start to manipulate with different tools within Illustrator. If you don't click the expand button, you won't be able to do some of the alterations with some of the tools that we'll get into a little bit later. So that is a way to take a bitmap image and make it vectored. Now, there is another tool that I found that works better than the live trace, but it does charge a little bit. It's a website called Vector Magic. It used to be free. They now charge. It's not too expensive, especially if you want to pay just for a few credits to trace a few images that you want, or you can pay for monthly, or you can even pay for a desktop download. So this is a great tool if you're interested in getting into this that I would invest in. It's come in very handy. It does an excellent job, much better than Adobe Illustrator in doing a trace. So that's a little bit about vector images versus bitmap images, when you may or may not use them, and what a vector image is versus a bitmap image.